This next book is another that I guess you could file under something called well-known authors but not so well-known titles. The author of this book is Henry Miller, probably best known for Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and having been the subject of American censure back when he was writing in the 30s and 40s because of his overt attention that he paid to sex. The novel is The Colossus of Maroussi, and it's a bit of an interesting book. Novel, I guess it is novel because parts of it are fictionalized, but it is based on a real set of travels that he took to Greece. But the so I guess you could call it a bit of a travel log too, but I'll mention a bit later as to why I don't really think that's accurate. The language here and the beauty of Greece are really the focal point, and I really like this book. On the recommendation of his friend and fellow author, Lawrence Durrell, who is maybe best known for the Alexandria Quartet and the Avignon Quintet, Henry Miller set out for Greece in 1939. After a decade of frenzied writing in both the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, and after those were written, Miller's intention was really nothing more than to relax in the preparation for a journey to Tibet, which he planned to take. And in a popular phrase that Miller himself probably would have despised, to find himself. The Colossus of Maroussi is pure prosopography, which isn't, of course, to say that he doesn't give flashing insight into the individual lives of characters, but it really is an ode to Greece and the Greek people. In fact, the Colossus of the title, a Greek poet by the name of George Katsimbalis, has a personality which sometimes threatens to marginalize Miller's own, which is quite a feat if you know the size of his personality. We also meet as a minor character the poet George Seferis, long before he actually goes on to become the first Greek to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. At one point, while Durrell and Miller are staring up into space, Durrell calls Miller a Rosicrucian, and reading the book, this is really no lie. Not only does Miller have this preternatural affinity for the mystical and the transcendent, which is very obvious from his book and from his use of language, which I'll show you in a second, but the various meditative bits of philosophy and courageously inventive speculative prose that dot the book are just beautifully conceived, written in a kind of ecstatic encounter with the holy. And I mentioned the word Rosicrucian. Let me just read you a bit, one paragraph of this writing on Saturn while they're looking up into the sky. Miller writes, "Saturn is the symbol of all omens and superstitions, the phony proof of divine entropy, phony because if it were true that the universe is running down, Saturn would have melted away long ago. Saturn is as eternal as fear and irresolution, growing more milky, more cloudy, with each compromise, each capitulation. Timid souls cry for Saturn just as children are reputed to cry for Castoria. Saturn gives us only what we ask for, never an extra ounce. Saturn is the white hope of the white race, which prattles endlessly about the wonders of nature and spends its time killing off the greatest wonder of all, man." So that's some pretty interesting writing. This is the only book that I've ever read by Henry Miller, and if his other writing is anything like that, I'm certainly eager to get to it. but most of the book is written in a kind of language like that. It's tense and dense and sort of full of awe and respect and veneration, and it's really quite unique. Like I said, I used the word travelogue earlier too, and to call this a travelogue is, I think, to devalue it. While its subject of putative love of Greece and the Greek people is what it's all about, Miller's approach is more reminiscent of writers like Julian of Norwich and the Revelations of Divine Love, or Thomas Merton's Seven-Story Mountain. For him, Greece was a religious experience, and all the more precious because it was purely accidental. He didn't really mean for it to mean so much. He was going there to prepare to go to Tibet. Miller was a kind of mortal Antaeus whose powers seemed like they would have been irrevocably sapped when they were finally compelled to bring himself back to finally compelled to bring himself back to the United States. Something that he probably only did because he saw the writing on the wall with Hitler coming to power and sort of that new European political force known as fascism coming to the fore. But this brief few months long visit right before the outbreak of World War II is really quite a literary event. Very, very interesting. Henry Miller's The Colossus of Maroussi.